G'day everyone, Prep Aussie here. I hope you're all well in whatever part of the world you're watching this video. Today is the 12th of the 4th, 2019, and the time here is 10:24 AM Australian Eastern Standard Time. Well folks, plenty going on. So much in fact that it's hard to keep up. So let's go through things. First of all, I still haven't found my camera. My son has misplaced it somewhere and I can't find it, so until either A, we find it, or B, I get another one, you won't be seeing my ugly mug on the screen for the moment. First off, let's start with my kind sponsor, Totally Rawsome, who make golden activated turmeric paste. I've had several people question me as regards to what's the difference between turmeric, or as you guys say, turmeric, and golden activated turmeric paste. Well look, I've tried all of them, and it's the way this one is blended. It's got several ingredients. These guys have done a lot of research, and it's different because it's the ingredients in it. And look, I shit you not, this stuff really does work. I'm virtually pain-free, and I'm not saying that just because I'm trying to sell this product. I don't get paid to sell this stuff, by the way. They give me a jar every now and again, and just so I can keep on top of what their products are, etc. And mate, this stuff does work. Simple as that. That's where you can find them. Bundle Farmers Market, 135 Bundle Road, Surfers Paradise, every Sunday 6 till 12. That's the contact details there, info@totallyrawsome.com.au, and their mailing list. Join our mailing list, please do so. Stuff does work, folks, seriously. Try it. Okay. For all of you out there that thought the deep state was beaten or whatever, then you are sadly misled. Because on the day that they find out that there is collusion and there has been spying, etc., within the Trump camp, let's go and arrest Julian Assange and kill all the newspaper feeds everywhere. So look folks, they are not going to report on anything as regards to the Trump campaign spying, etc., etc. Now, the interesting thing there is this, and I'm going to say this a couple of times over the next couple of weeks. How come, right, this becomes really crucial, and you're going to find this out in the next couple of weeks anyway, but how come Alexander Downer went to meet with George Papadopoulos? And the reason I'm saying that is, how and why did he, why was he even involved? Somebody sent him there. I'm going to say this again. Somebody sent Alexander Downer, who, by the way, is the leading diplomat for Australia in the UK. He's the ambassador, UK ambassador. Now, don't you think it's kind of weird that the UK ambassador went to meet some low-level, and I mean this with all respect to George Papadopoulos, low-level person in the Trump campaign? And I say low-level because that's exactly what everybody who's been associated with this has called George Papadopoulos, low-level. So why is the leading Australian ambassador meeting George Papadopoulos? And who sent him there? That's the big question. Who? Doctor Who? Who sent Alexander Downer to meet with George Papadopoulos? See, that's the thing. When we find that out, then we'll know. And here's the interesting thing. And if any of you want to go through this process in Australia, you can do this. You can do a Freedom of Information request to examine Alexander Downer's diary for not only that day, for the weeks preceding that and the weeks post that meeting. You can actually do that because he is an Australian representative. He must keep track of all of his diary and meetings, etc., phone calls, everything is logged. Everything. So wouldn't it be interesting to find out just who and why Alexander Downer, the top Australian diplomat in the UK, went to meet a lowly person in the Trump campaign? Interesting, eh? Now, if you haven't watched this, I'm watching this twice actually, because the information is so vital in this. This is the Dan Bongino show. Now, if you were wondering just what was going on, watch this show. Episode 956, The Game is Over. Folks, the information in this will start to make you believe, will make you understand just how wrong all this stuff is and how bad this is going to get for all the people involved in this. And that includes Alexander Downer. Now I want to go back to Julian Assange. There is no doubt in my mind that Julian Assange is going to be extradited to the US. Always was going to be. There's been a big theatre played out that he was, maybe he won't be, maybe he won't be. I reckon that this has been set up for a while. But they couldn't do it before the Mueller report came out. Do you understand? Because that would have blown a hole in the Mueller report. So, the Mueller report's come out saying there's been no collusion, no corruption, etc., etc. Bang! Julian Assange gets arrested, gets extradited to the US, gets brought before the Commons, the Congress, and then proceeds to give everybody all the information as regards to WikiLeaks, Seth Rich, the whole lot, and literally blows this right open. Because this guy here, believe it or not, is the linchpin. And I reckon this guy here has got the emails to tell us who and why Alexander Downer went to see George Papadopoulos. Interesting, eh? The world's falling apart, folks. The deep state war is falling apart. War against us is falling apart. Now, it's just interesting to note that if you follow all this closely, this is becoming, they are going to try and assassinate somebody soon in America. They have to start a war. They have to do something horrible, drop a bomb. Who knows what it is, but this is ramping up. They must be working so hard behind the scenes at the US top level to try and stop or mitigate whatever's coming from the deep state, because the knives are out, folks. The knives are out. And I want to show you something that should worry you all deeply here in Australia. And it's kind of getting off track as regards to that, but it's kind of all ties in. I'll show you exactly where it is. Go to business. The first heading there is federal election as economic challenges mount. Is this a contest you'd be better off losing? Right, well that's not the one that I was going to show you. It's this one here. Property falls in Sydney and Melbourne larger than expected, NAB says. Now that's interesting because you notice that it's NAB. Well, NAB is the smaller of the four. So you've got Westpac, Commonwealth, ANZ, and then NAB, National Australia Bank. Now, it's interesting if you read this article, just how dire they're predicting this to get. NAB, I'll read it to you so you can understand. NAB has revised down its prediction for property prices in Australia's two biggest cities, saying the fall in values since the start of last year has exceeded its forecast. Now, we now expect Sydney to decline around 20% from peak to trough, while Melbourne is expected to fall around 15%. He added that the slide in 2018 and 2019 was larger than expected. I'll read that overall, we expect some further price declines in 2019 before levelling out in 2020, Mr. Oster said, with the weakness being driven by ongoing declines in both Sydney and Melbourne. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, folks. And you won't read about this anywhere else, I don't think. The analyst from the country's fourth largest bank, who also tipped the Reserve Bank of Australia to cut interest rates twice this year, forecast Sydney unit prices to fall by 7.2%, blah, blah, blah. The key factors we see as having driven these declines include the early prudential tightening, particularly for investors, some tightening in credit condition on the expenses side, waning foreign investment demand, as well as weaker price expectations themselves. AMP Chief Economist Shane Oliver said last week he expected home prices in the two big cities to continue falling. And then if you read just over where those little pictures are, Australia to see the world's worst house price fall. Now look, if you're like me and you got a mortgage, etc., I bought cheap. Excuse me, but that doesn't mean I'm out of the woods. I bought an old, basically a ramshackle, termite-ridden, damp house that I'm doing up. And we bought an acre of land for 500k. Now that might sound like a lot, but it's actually not, considering that every other house around here went for 1.5 million. So we bought really cheap. We knew we had a lot of work to do, but that doesn't mean that we have, any great foot in the door or anything. What that means is that the people who have bought around here have actually bought for a shitload more than what I paid for my house. And already in my street, when we first shifted in here a couple of years ago, a house would go on sale and be literally snapped up within a couple of days. Now, you're looking at months, 6 months, before a house in this street is snapped up. And we live in one of the prime locations in the southeast Queensland market. So what does that tell you? So, look, the real worry in that whole thing there that they spoke about was this bit here. The analysis from the country's fourth largest bank also tipped the Reserve Bank of Australia to cut interest rates twice this year. Now, you're not going to hear that. Now, sorry, I will say that, I will rephrase that. You have already heard that from the Reserve Bank Governor of Australia. I can't remember who his name is, but he openly said in an announcement at the National Press Club that they will be prepared, if the market continues to decline, to cut interest rates. Now, if they do cut interest rates, what's that mean? Well, that means the major overall lending rate, its interbank rate really, falls. But then, see, that doesn't work the opposite direction, because interest rates for houses will have to rise because they won't make any money. They're not making money. They are making money, we all know that, but it's investor driven. So if they're not if they're not lending money to Tom, Dick and Harry and Sarah because of the fact that they've tightened their lending conditions, well, they're not getting any more money, folks. So they will have to start raising their interest rates. And the money coming from overseas, by the way, the intrabank lending rate from overseas is going up, not down, which means that Westpac, etc., Commonwealth Bank, all the big four, anyone actually, who has to borrow money from overseas to pay off, or, to put into the market here in Australia, is going to be paying more for that. So if you've got a business, or if you have any sort of housing loan, etc., then hey, listen, this is not investment advice, by the way. I'm not an investment broker, a financial advisor. I would be looking around right now for the biggest deal, the best deal you can get for a mortgage for the next 2 to 3 years, and locking it in. Don't do any more than 2. That would be my only thing. We did ours once for 5, and we ended up paying back 10 grand to get out of it, which we saved money in the end anyway, but never mind. And I got investment advice after that, and they said never do them more than 2, because after 2 years things can go wildly up and down in 2 years. So also, if you have credit card debt, start trying to make sure that you secure your credit card debt. And by that I mean pay it off, or shift it to a lower rate that will be fixed. Now, if you're an Australian, you will remember that during the late 90s, was it early 90s, credit rates on credit cards here in Australia went up to something like 31% and literally broke people overnight. Interest rates on houses went to 19%. And if you're in America and that, you know what I'm talking about. I think you guys went to a fairly big rate as well. But here in Australia, a girlfriend that I was going out with at the time, she had a bill on her credit cards which went to 32% because she went overseas, had a good jolly up for 2 years, arrived back here in Australia, and the credit crunch hit, and next thing you know, she was paying 31% off her credit cards. And that, by the way, is on top of, doesn't matter if you borrowed $15,000 on your credit card when it was at 9%, that 31% is on that money that you borrowed. It's like a little mini bank. So don't think, well, I only went to Aldi's and only spent $400 at 4% this week. They can't charge me 33%. Well, read the fine print, folks. They can. And they do. And they will. It's the credit cards that are going to break everybody. They know that. And that's how if they are going to take your home, that's how they'll take your home, by credit card debt. They'll say you defaulted on your credit card debt. We're now going to leverage that debt over to your home. It belongs to us. The only way you might be able to get out of it, and this is not financial advice, is to change your credit card debt to a different bank. So don't hold the bank's credit cards in the mortgage that you have. Does that make sense? So if you've got a Commonwealth Bank debt, don't have Commonwealth Bank credit cards. Or try and get away from them if you can. Try and cut a direct link try and set up a middleman between you three, if you know what I mean. Okay. So, loads going on, folks. And as always, let's talk about the election. Why not? It will be interesting to note, or is interesting to note. I read something yesterday, I didn't Photoshop it and I couldn't find it again. They are already talking about a massive no-show for the election, i.e. no confidence in the parties, no confidence in the process, so there will be a no vote, the biggest no vote or no-show vote in Australian history. And they only announced it yesterday. So already people are saying, not interested, don't do anything for me, can't give a shit, why should I give a shit? Right, one last thing. This, right or wrong, let's talk about free speech. The guy in the picture, for all you who don't know this man, is a gifted athlete. Unfortunately, he is a Christian evangelical, if that's the word, and is dominated by his Christian faith. Now, yesterday or the day before, put out a quote or a text basically deriding gays, basically. And he is now going to be sacked from the Australian. He plays for the Australian rugby union team, and he is their best player by a mile. But yesterday he released a text saying basically, if you're a homosexual, a drunk, an idiot, etc., then you're all going to hell. And they are now going to sack this man for speaking his mind and his views on religion and abortion. I'll actually get it. Hang on a sec. Okay, this is the quote here. Some 2 hours later, Folu, Israel Folu, who last year garnered widespread criticism over similar comments, wrote on Instagram that those that are living in sin will end up in hell unless you repent. Jesus Christ loves you and is giving you time to turn away from your sin and come to him, Folu writes. Well, that statement and the actual sign that he put up under it got him suspended from, or will get his contract ripped up. The deeply religious player, who is a member of Assemblies of God Church, was not formally sanctioned for his previous comments. Now, do you understand this, folks? So basically, if you're an elite athlete, you can say anything you want to say about people drinking beer, go on ads promoting beer, you can do anything you want, but you cannot promote your faith and your beliefs. Can you believe this? I'm going to do more on this later after the full story comes out. We'll leave it there for the time being. It's just ridiculous. He's actually being shut up for his beliefs. And lo and behold, here is the verse of the day. He himself bore our sins in his body on the cross, so that we might die to sins and live for righteousness. By his wounds you have been healed. How appropriate. And okay, folks, as always, we'll end with the Lord's Prayer. And for all of you who actually ask why I say this, is because if you haven't realised, very, very soon it will be deemed an act of, what's the word? Treason, I guess, to actually say this. Because people like this and people like us are now, unless you haven't realised it, are now no longer able to say what they want. So for all of you who think that I was kidding when I said that they will eventually shut us down for saying this, maybe you want to think again. Because if they're quite prepared to chop this guy who's their best player for speaking his mind on his religion, then what do you think they're going to do to people who sit here and say the Lord's Prayer and Bible verses? And as I said, I'm not even religious. I'm doing it because I think that it needs to be done, because they are slowly but surely stopping people from saying whatever they want. So say this with me together. The Lord's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. All right, folks, until tomorrow, God bless. Prep out.